Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Flutter Firebase series. In part 1, we talked about how to actually create a new user in Firebase. And in part 2, we talked about how to get data from your Firestore database. And in part 3, we're going to talk about how to create new data and update data in your database. So as you can see here in our screen, we have our feed and we're in our food object. I created a new timestamp field and we have it in our from map constructor here too. So I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to add another function here. This function is going to be used when we upload food to our database because it has to be uploaded in a map. So we need to return a map of type string. The string will be our keys here, and it'll be a dynamic value. And let's just call it toMap, okay? And we're going to return a map object. So return. We're going to have it in a format like this. So we're going to have ID, and we're going to put the ID field into here. And then we're going to have name and put the name into here. So make sure that these names are the same as your field names, and make sure that the string keys are the same as the string keys here. So I'm going to skip the video a bit ahead while I finish these. Okay, so now we have our other fields in here. So this toMap function will be used in our API file when we upload and update our objects. So now I want to create a new screen. Let's go to screens and create a new file. I'm going to call it foodform.dart, and it's going to be a stateful widget. So we're going to have stateful widget, and it's going to be food form. And let's import our material.dart. And let's just have the child be a text right now with a food form. Okay, and let's save this. We can get rid of this too. And now let's go to our feed.dart and let's navigate to that from here. So we'll go down here and we'll do navigator.of context, and then we'll push a material page route. Actually, let's just copy this right here. So we'll just copy this from up here to make it faster. And we will go to our food form. Okay, and let's copy and paste this in our detail screen because now I want to navigate to that from our detail screen from the edit button here. So let's do the same thing here. And let's import the food form. Let's restart. Okay, let's press this. Up, we forgot our scaffold. So let's go to our food form and let's just create a scaffold. And let's have this be the body. And we'll have the app bar. Let's do app bar. And title will be, let's do text, and we'll do, let's just call it food form. And let's restart. And now let's go to our food form. And you can see we have our food form here. Let's go to detail. And you can see food form. Okay, so that's the first step. Now let's finish our food form here. This is going to be a lot of code, but you can separate this out into different files if you need to. So the first thing is I want the body to be a single scroll child view. So I'm doing this because I don't know how much space our widgets are going to take up on the screen vertically. So I want to make sure that this can scroll. We're going to create a food form here. So form, and let's put this on a different line. And the form is going to have a key. So let's go up here to our state and create that key. And it's going to be final. So we're going to have final, and the key is of type global key. And we have to put in a type here too. So it'll be related to form state. So form state. And let's just call it underscore form key. And it equals global key and form state. So this should look familiar if you saw my video on how to use forms in Flutter. So we have our key here, and let's add it to our form key, or let's add our form key to our key here. Okay, and while we're here in our state, let's add our other state variables that we might need here. Okay, and in our form, we're gonna have our sub-ingredient list, right? So we need to add to our sub-ingredient list as we add new items. I wanna create a list of sub-ingredients. And let's set it to an empty array. And I also wanna hold the current food item as we change it in this food form. So this current food item is not gonna be the same as our current food in our food notifier. So keep that in mind. So we're gonna have a food, current food. Okay, so let's continue our form here. So we're going to auto validate it. There's a key here for that. So we have auto validate, set it to true. It's false by default. Now we're gonna have a child for the form, and the child is gonna be a column. So we have our widget array here. And inside of our widget array, we want to show an image. So I'm going to create a function for that. So I'm going to call it show image. I'm doing this so we don't have all of our code in this one build block. So let's go up here and create that function. So show image. So for now, let's just add a return. Let's just add a text view. So text, and we'll just return image here. We could put a widget here. So let's refresh or restart. And let's go to the food form. So I want to add a size box. So let's do size box, something like height 16. And then we're gonna add a title for our form here. So let's do text. And for the title, I'm gonna put create food. And let's do text align. And we're going to align center, so text align center. And then we're gonna have a style here. So let's do style, text style. And I'm gonna set the font size to be something like 30. Refresh, let's say. And let's go back up here to our single child scroll view. I want to put in some padding. So let's do padding, edge insets, all. Let's do something like 32. Okay, and let's do another size box here. So let's copy this. And for this size box, I guess we'll have the same thing here. It's not important right now. And let's do a button theme. So this button theme is to make the button the same color as our theme color. And the child is going to be of type raised button. And then for the text, we're going to have add image. Okay. And for this, I want a style also. So we're going to have a, for the text, for the text, we're going to have a style. And we're going to have a text style. And then we're gonna have color be white, or colors.white. Okay, and we need a onPressed here. We will come back to this in the future. So let's save, reload. Okay, and now under our button here, I wanna create some text views. But first I'm gonna actually put these in a function. So I'm gonna have a name and a category field. So we're gonna have build name field, and then we're gonna have build category field. Another size box here. This one can be 16 for now. So let's work on these functions real quick. Let's go up here and we'll do widget build name field, and then copy paste this, and we'll do build category field. So both of these will be a form field. So we're going to have a return text form field. So in our text form field, we're going to have a keyboard type. We're going to have it be just text input dot text. I'm going to have a style, and the style will be text style size, and we're going to set the size to 20 to make it easier to see. And we're gonna have a validator here. So it's gonna be string value here. And we're gonna say if the value is empty, then we return something like name is required. Okay, I'm going over all this fast because this is something that I covered in my form video for Flutter. Okay, and then we're gonna have if value.length, we're gonna say maybe less than 3, or if the value is maybe greater than 20, then we could say return name must be less than 3 or more than 3 and less than 20. Okay, if that all passes, then we just return null. Okay, and then we have our onSaved here. So we have onSaved. So we have our string value here. So this is where we actually use our current food object here. So here we can say current food.name equal to value. So we're setting the state when we press the save button for our form. So I'm going to copy and paste this here. Actually, before I do that, I want to add one more thing here. I want to add a label decoration. So label, decoration, and then we have input decoration. And then I want to set the label text to be name. Yeah, let's just copy and paste this for now. So we're going to copy and paste this into here. I'm going to call this category. And category, let's just keep this the same. Okay, this should all be the same. Okay, so we return this. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, and let's close our widget here. Return scaffold, so this should be that. Okay. So now let's refresh. And you can see we have our names here, our category, everything is centered. It looks good so far. So I'm going to go up here to our state at the top, and I'm going to add our initial function. So init state. So I want to get the current food from our current food notifier. So I'm going to add our food notifier here. So food notifier equals provider dot of food notifier. And then we're going to have our context here. And we're going to set listen to false, because we only want to use that to get our data, not actually listen for changes. Okay, let's add our provider. If you don't know about provider, please look at my video that I did on using provider in Flutter. It's a pretty easy but powerful tool to use in Flutter. Okay, now we have that. I want to have a if statement now. I want to say if food notifier dot current food is not equal to null, then I want to set current food to food notifier dot current food. So remember, if you set the state in init state, you don't need to say set state, because this function is ran before we even build our widget tree. Okay, so we have else current food to equal new food. It'll either be the current food or it'll be a new instance of food. And we can get rid of this new here. So let's go down to our forms here again, and I want to initialize the form to be the values of our current food if we have a current food item already. So this will be the case if we try to edit a food. So to do that, we just have a key here called initial value, and we can set initial value to current food dot name. And we can do the same down here for the category. So we can say initial value current food dot name. Okay, so now we want to get to a place where we actually can set our current food item. In the case of the feed, when we press this button, we may or may not have a current food item. Like for example, if we go to our detail screen, we set our current food item. If we go back to this, then we still have that current food item. So above our navigator here, I want to set food notifier.current food equal to null. Okay, so this will make sure that whenever we go to this screen from the feed, we don't have a current food. So let's restart this. And let's test it. So let's press the plus button. And you can see that nothing has really changed. So let's try it with the detail screen. So let's go to something like sushi and press edit. And now you can see that we have our items populated here, but I forgot to put the category here instead of the name. So let's go back to our food form and it should be category. Let's refresh or restart. Let's go here again, edit, you can see sushi, Japanese. Okay, so now you can see that we have our current food item being populated here. So now let's populate our sub-ingredients here with our grid. So you can see here we have our grid, right? So I want to put the same grid inside of our food form here. So let's go to the detail screen and let's get our grid. Okay, and I want to go back to the food form, and below our size box, I want to put our grid. And now let's change a few things for this screen. This should be the same, this should be the same, the padding is okay, the axis spacing is okay, but the children now is not coming from our current food, it's coming from the local sub-ingredients. Now we just have underscore sub-ingredients. I think I put that here, like sub-ingredients. Okay, and I think all of this should be okay still. Let's save, refresh. And you see nothing here because we're not setting our sub-ingredients yet. I want to create a new text field for our sub-ingredients. So I'm going to create a text field and a button. And I'm going to do that in a row. So I want to create a row widget. So we're going to have row here. And inside of this row, I'm going to have a function that creates a text view or a text field. I'm going to call it a build sub-ingredient field. And below that, I'm going to have a button. So I'm going to have a button theme. And in this, the child is going to be a raised button. The child will be text. And then let's just call it add. Put the sub-ingredient function up here. Let's do that here. And for this, I'm going to create a size box first. So size box. And I'm going to define the width of this to be something like 200. I think for the child, I'm going to have a text field. Not a text form field, but just a text field. So I'm doing this because I don't want this to be part of the form that gets saved. Let's first have a decoration, input decoration, and we're going to have label text, and let's call it sub-ingredient. Let's have a style here. So style, I'm going to have a text style, and we're going to set the font size to be the same as the others. So it'll be 20. I also want to create a controller for this one. I'm doing this because I want to actually clear the text when I enter a new sub-ingredient in. So up here in our state, I want to create a new text. So this is how you access different text forms in your widget tree. Sub-ingredient controller equals new text editing controller. And we're going to set this to the form that we just created, or the text form, the text field that we created. So controller, it'll be sub-ingredient controller. And we can set the keyboard type here too, if we want. We'll just copy and paste that from here. And we need a on pressed here. Do this for now. Reload. You can see here we have our field, here we have our button. Okay, and now I want this to be spaced across the width of the screen. So I want some space in between this field and this button. So let's go down here to the row again. And before children, I want to put a main axis alignment. And I'm going to say main axis alignment dot space between. So this puts space between this and this to take up the entire space of the width. Save. Okay, and now you can see that this looks a lot better than before. And let's change the color of the add button. So let's go down here, or the add text in the add button. And let's do style, text style, color, colors.white. So in our onPressed here for the button, I want to create a new function. I'm going to call it something like add sub ingredient. And we're going to pass in the text from the text field here. And that's why I created the text controller. So up here, this allows us to get the text from the text field. So let's go down here and pass in the sub ingredient controller dot text. Okay, and we'll create this function now. So let's go up here and let's do add sub ingredient, and we'll pass in the string text, and we'll put a if condition here saying if text dot is not empty, then we want to set the state of our sub ingredient. So we do sub ingredients, that's our state object, dot add, because it's an array, and then we add the text here. Okay, and after that, we want to clear this field here. So there's a clear function on the controller object. So we can do sub ingredient dot controller dot clear. Okay, and let's restart, and let's go to add a new food. Okay, so let's add a new sub ingredient. And you can see that we're adding sub ingredients here. And if we go to our detail screen for a food object, you can see that we don't have our sub ingredients here. So we need our sub ingredients to show here when we go to edit a food. So let's go back up to our init state function here. And below here, we want to set the sub ingredient state initially. So we can do sub ingredients dot add all, and then I want to take the sub ingredients from the food notifier here. So I want to say food notifier dot current food dot sub ingredients. Okay, and I also want to set the image while I'm here too. So let's go up here to the state variables, and we'll add a new one here, and it will be a type string. So string underscore, let's call it image URL. So if we already have an image, we want to show it on the screen here when we go to edit a food. So we can say underscore image URL equals food notifier dot current food dot image. So if this doesn't exist, this will just be null by default. So okay, let's save and let's restart. And let's go to edit a food. Let's go edit. And you can see that our sub ingredients are here, but we're not setting our image for the food yet. So the file will get set when we pick a file from the image picker. So let's do file, and we'll do underscore image file. And we'll set that here in a second. So let's import from Dart.io. And let's go to the show image function here. So we can get rid of this for now. This function will show the image here if we have it. So we want to put a condition here. We want to say if we don't have an image file and we don't have an image URL. So if we don't have a local file that we picked from our phone and we don't have an image URL in the food already, then this condition will be true. Null. Oops, equals null. Okay. Then we return some kind of placeholder image. But for this video, I'm just going to put a text here. I'm just going to say image placeholder. You can do that yourself. Just put like a random image here that you want to put here. Else if the underscore image file is not equal to null. So if we picked an image, then we want to show that image. And then we'll do else underscore image URL not equal to null. And in this case, we already have an image URL from our food. So this would be on the edit screen. So in this case, we can handle this now. So first, let's put a print line here just to do some debugging. So let's do print showing image from URL. Okay, and then I want to return a stack. So a stack lets you put two widgets on top of each other, like visually. And I'm doing this because I want to create a image, or I want to create a button on top of the image where we can change the image. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's do return stack. And for this, I want the alignment to be alignment directional. So alignment directional dot bottom center. So this is alignment directional here. And you can see here, it aligns the center point along the bottom edge. Okay, and then I want to do children. And for the children, this will be the widgets in the stack. So for the first one, I want to show image.network because we're getting the image from the URL. Okay, and then I want that to be image URL. And then this also takes in a few other parameters here. I'm going to use fit. I want to fit it to cover the entire space in the image widget. I want to do box fit dot cover. And I want the height to be maybe around this much. So we could say for now, maybe 250. And let's reload this. Let's just put something in here for now so we don't get a warning. Image from file. Okay, so return. Okay, so show image. Let's reload again. Let's go to sushi and then go to edit. And ta-da, you can see that we have our image here. So I want to put a button over this. So I want to get rid of this button here and put a button here. So in our stack, we want to add another thing on top of the stack. So we can put a flat button here. And I want the child to be a text. So we can do text, and I want the text to say change image. Okay, and when pressed, we will get to this in a second. So we can do, I'm going to create a new function here called get local image. Okay, and let's create this down here. Okay, and we'll get to this later. So let's restart. Let's go to sushi, edit. You don't see it here, right? So let's add a style here for our text. Let's do style, text style, and we'll add a color for this, and we want the color to be white, colors.white, so we can see it. And let's add a font size to be 22. I want the text to be kind of thick, so I'm gonna do font weight. Font weight is a good way to set like more bold type text. And this takes in the type font weight, like weight 400. Reload, and now you can see our text here. So we can see change image. Okay, and I want this to be more of like a overlay type of button here. So I want to put a padding here first. Padding, let's do edge insets all, something like 16. And I want to set a background for our button. I want it to be black, but I want it to be kind of like a opaque black. So let's do colors dot black, and let's do 54 for the opaqueness. And let's refresh. And now you can see we have a button here. So this overlays the image, and we can still click this button to change the image. So these two buttons will do the same thing. You can get rid of one of these if you want to. We might do that later in the video. For now, we'll just keep it like this. And for add image, I also want to call the same function. So let's copy this and go down to our add image, and we'll paste this into here. Okay, and now let's actually implement our get local image function here. So get local image is where we're going to use a new library that I added. I've added a few different ones here. I've added image picker. Firebase storage is how we get the storage bucket for our Firebase backend. So we'll talk about path later, and we'll talk about UUID. Let's go back to our food form, and I want to use the image picker package. So we're going to create a new file, and we're going to name it image file, and this is going to be a asynchronous operation. So let's make this async, and we will await the image picker. So this is coming from our import here. And for image picker, let's go to the document here for that. So this is the library that I'm using. It's pretty easy. You install it like this. There's a README for this too. You can go through all this. You have to actually add these to your iOS info.plist, so don't forget that. It's a very, very easy library to use. You'll usually just use it like this here. So it'll be a asynchronous function. You do image picker.pickImage. So let's go back here, and we can do image picker.pickImage, and then we can set a few different things here. I want to set the source to be image source.gallery. So we'll get it from our local gallery. So I want to set this to be of lower quality for this video to keep the files pretty small. So I want to say image quality. It goes from, I think, 0 to 100, 100 being 100% of the quality. I want to set it to 50 for this case. And I also want to set the height, or not the height, but the width. So I want to say max width of the image. I want to set it to something like maybe 400. Okay, and now after we get the image from this, I want to set the image to our state. So I want to say if image file is not equal to null, then I want to set the state of our image file. So we have underscore image file, and I want to set that to be the image file. Okay. So in order to actually see this in our app, we need to go down to our show image, and we can handle our condition where we get a image file. So here, let's get rid of this return. And first, let's print showing image from local file. Okay, and I want to return a stack here too. So let's actually copy and paste this up here. And instead of image.network, I want to say image.file. And the file here will be the local file that we have in our state. So we can say image file. And everything else will pretty much be the same. And let's restart. Let's go to Sushi. Let's go to edit. And let's see if we can actually change the image. And this opens the local file storage here. And we can go here and we can select image. And you can see that we have the image here. And that's because in our show stack here, or show image function, we're returning that stack with the local image file. Okay, so pretty simple. And we can change it again and we get this. This image is a different resolution here, or different aspect ratio. So that's why it looks like this here. But you can change that yourself to be whatever you want. Okay, so now we have a edit food form where we can see all of our existing data for our food. If we are trying to edit a food, I want to show edit food here, not create food. In order to do this, I want to pass a Boolean to this form to let us know if we are editing a food or if we are actually creating a new food. So let's go up here to our state, and in our stateful widget, I want to create a new final Boolean. So I want to say final bool is updating. Okay, and then we need to pass that to our food form. So we need to pass in via the constructor. So let's do food form, and I'm gonna pass in this dot is updating. And I want to make this required for this. So whenever we go to the food form, whatever is calling this needs to pass in this. So we do that with the annotation at required. So this requires this for this constructor. And let's go down to the create food here, to the create food text here. And I want to put a condition saying widget dot is updating. So if this is true, so we use a ternary operation, I want to say edit food, else I want to show create food. So now we need to pass in that is updating field to our constructor. So we need to go to our feed here, and for this we could say is updating. This will be false here because we're not updating when we press the button on the feed screen. And in the detail screen, we are updating, so we can say is updating true. Okay, so let's go back to our food form. Okay, so let's reload. Let's press the button on the feed screen. And we're getting the getter subingredients was called on null. So let's see where this is actually taking place. Let's go up here. Food form 37. Okay, so we should just be using the underscore current food here, not the one from the food notifier. Okay. And let's go to add a new food. You can see we have no image here and no data here. Let's go back to our food here. Let's go to detail and edit. And now you can see we have edit food here. And we have all of our information here that we need. So this is looking good. So we're almost done with this food form. I know this is a lot of code, but we're almost done. Let's add one more thing. I want to not show this button if we have a food here, or if we have a food image here. So let's go down to the button here where we do add image. So let's search for add image. Okay, and I just want to put a condition here saying if we have, or if we don't have an image file, so image file equals null and underscore image URL equals null. Then I want to show the button thing. So I want to show this button. So if we don't have an image file and we don't have an image URL, else we just show a text here saying no image found. Okay, restart. And let's go to our food here. And you can see we have our add image. Actually, that's not what I want to put here. I just want to put a space because that's not true if that's the case. So let's just put a size box here so we have something of height 0. And let's restart. This should be the same. Okay, and let's go to edit a food. And now you can see that button is not there. And we can just go to change image here, and we can change the image to something else. And let's make sure that our subingredient is working when we try to add a new one. So let's go to add. And you can see we can add new ones here. I'm not going to worry about removing subingredients for now. You can figure that out on your own. It's not really that difficult. So the last thing I want to do is I want to handle saving the form. So let's go down here and let's create a new floating action button. I'm just going to copy and paste this from the feed screen to save time. So let's go here. Actually, hold on. Single child scroll view. Yeah, it should be here. Okay. And for the icon, we're going to do icons.save. Okay. And for the on pressed, I want to create a new function. I'm going to name it save food. And we're going to pass in the context. You'll see why we're doing this in a second. So let's create this. So we'll just do save food. And this is where we actually validate our form and we handle the data. So first I want to say if the form key, So let's do form key dot current state dot validate. So if it's not a valid form, let's just return. You can do whatever you want here. So if we are valid, then let's just save state.save. And now we need to actually make sure that our form or that our current food is correct. So I'm going to print out a couple of things here. I'm going to print out name, add the $_ underscore current food dot name. Okay, and I'm going to do this for the category and the sub-ingredients. So let's do category and sub-ingredients. Let's do category. And here we'll do sub-ingredients. And we're going to cast this to a string, to string. I spelled this wrong. Sub-ingredients. Ingredients. Okay. And we also want to do the same for the image file too. So the image file and the image URL. So current food, here we're not taking that from the current food. That's actually part of the local state. So we just need to do image file, and I'm going to do .toString because the file is not in the right format for the console. So we just do toString. And here we'll just do, we don't need the brackets for this one because we're just going to use underscore image URL. Okay. So in order to set the sub-ingredients, we need to set it to our current food. So let's do current food. Actually, let's do that under here. So let's do current food dot sub-ingredients because that's not set yet. We're setting the sub-ingredients locally, but we're not setting it in the current food yet. So let's do that here. And then we'll just set it equal to underscore sub-ingredients. So as we add more stuff to the sub-ingredients, that'll be put into the local state here, and then we can add that to the current food object here. Okay, and let's save, and let's reload. So we have our save here. So let's press the save button and see what happens. Save, and you can see we have name, Japanese. Let's put the colons in here. We have sub-ingredients, all of our sub-ingredients are here. Image file, we have the file path here. And we have the image URL that's stored in our image object. So keep in mind, as we edit the food image locally, the image URL will still be there because that's still stored in our Firebase backend. And that's still part of the Firebase object. But we'll see how we handle uploading a new file for an image in a second. Okay, so we are about done with our food form. Now let's focus on the actual meat of this video, and that's the food API part, where we actually upload the food to our Firebase backend. So let's go to the food API class. We have our get foods here to get all of our foods. Let's create a new function called upload food and image, let's say. I want to create two different functions. I want to create a function to upload our image, and I want to create a function to upload our food. But we need to upload our image first before we upload our food. And you'll see what I mean in a second here. We're going to pass in our food object to this function. So let's do food. And I want to pass in a Boolean to let us know if the food is being updated or is it being created for the first time. So let's do bool is updating. And then I want to pass in another object, which is our file. So let's do file, local file. And let's import that from .io. And this is going to be asynchronous. So async. Okay. And now we want to have a condition saying if local file is not equal to null. Okay. And we can make this optional if you want to. So we can do something like this. And now I want to say print uploading image. So in this case, we're uploading a new file, regardless of whether we have an image URL or not. So now we actually want to create a file name for our image. We want the file storage names to be of a certain format. So let's go to the Firebase backend. And in my React Native video, I already formatted these images in a certain way. So I want the Flutter app to follow the same format. So let's go to images. And as you can see here, this is our new image format. And this is the correct format that we want for all of our images going forward. So it'll be a unique ID here. So let's go back to our code. And I added these these three packages here. Firebase storage is how we access our Firebase backend image bucket, or file bucket, I should say. And path, we'll see what we use path for in a second. And UUID is how we will create our unique ID for our image file name. So let's go to the path documentation here. I put this into the app already. It's really easy to install. You just do path this in your pub spec and do git. We can get the path of our file here. So in this case, we're just going to get the extension of our path. You can read through this if you want to, but we're just using this for a very specific purpose in our app. Let's go to Visual Code again, and I'm going to say var file extension. I'm not sure if I spelled that right. Extension equals path. So first we need to actually import this from the path library. So let's go back here and we're going to import this. So import, and I'm just going to import it as path so it's more readable. Let's go down here. I'm going to say path dot extension. So extension gets the file extension of the path. So if you have an image with like image.png, this will get the .png part. So it includes the dot. So keep that in mind. So path.extension, and then you just pass in the actual path. So you pass in local file. This is a file object, and then you do .path. Okay, and we can just print the file extension here too, if you're curious. So let's print file extension. Okay, and now I'm going to create a unique ID. So let's go down to our UUID Dart package here. So this allows you to create a unique ID. So we're going to use v4 here, and I'm going to import this package. And let's go up here. Let's import this. And now we can do var, and we'll call it UUID. And we'll do UUID, and then dot v4. So that's all you need to do to actually create a unique ID. And now we actually want to access our Firebase storage. So we get that from our Firebase storage package. So we do final storage ref. And then we can just call it Firebase storage ref. And now we access our Firebase storage object. So we can say Firebase storage dot instance. And then we can do dot ref. So this is a reference to the Firebase storage location. So it'd be a reference to this here. Okay, but now we want to point to this location here, foods image. So we do dot child, and then we put in the actual path here. So it's foods/images. So foods/images. And now we do slash, and this is where we actually name our image file. So it'll be $ UUID. So we take this unique ID here, we put it into here, and then we do another $ file extension. So it'll be whatever this generates, it'll be that .jpeg or PNG or GIF. So this defines our file at the location. So this is a reference to that file at that location, but we have not created it yet. So let's actually create it and put that file into our backend. So now we do await, and we can access this Firebase storage reference now. So we can do Firebase storage ref dot put file is how you actually put the file into the backend. So put file, and then we can say local file. Okay, and then we can say dot on complete. And then we can catch the error if you want to. So we can do dot catch error on error. And then we'll just say print on error. And then we can just return false here, because we don't want to continue this if we cannot upload the image. Okay, so now at this point we've uploaded our file. Now I want to get the actual URL that was generated when we uploaded our file. So if we look at our database again, and you can look at our food objects, this image URL is what is generated in our backend by default. So you can see this is from previous things that I've uploaded already. So let's go back to our app. We'll say string URL equals, and then we'll await Firebase storage ref. And then we can get the downloaded URL from that. So we can do get download URL. And after that completes, so you can do print download URL here. Okay. And now at this point, I want to upload the food. But let's handle the else condition here too. So let's do else. And then I want to print, let's do something like skipping image upload. Okay, and now I want to create a new function here. So let's go down here and I want to call it upload food. And this function will only be called inside of this file. So I'm just going to put underscore here. I'm going to pass in the food here also. And I'm also going to pass in the same Boolean that's up here. So bool is updating. And then I want to pass in an optional image URL. So it'll be the case where we get the image URL here. So let's do brackets, string image URL. Okay, and this will be asynchronous. So let's do async. And now inside of here, I want to create a reference to our food object. So the same as we did up here. So let's copy and paste this. And we can get rid of this because I only want a reference to the collection only. So this would be of type collection reference. So we can do collection reference. Okay. And now I want to check to see if this is null. So if this image URL is null, I want to say if image URL is not equal to null, then I want to set the image parameter of our food to that image URL. So I want to say food.image equals image URL. Okay. So I'm formatting the food correctly before we actually upload the entire food. Okay, and now I want to say if we're updating the food. So if is updating, I want to do something else. Okay, so if we're updating our food, I want us to know when we have updated the food. So we have a updated food or updated at field in our food object. So we need to set that here. So I'm going to do food.updated at equals. So we need a timestamp object. There's no simple way to get the server timestamp from Firebase. So I'm actually going to use the timestamp locally now. So I'm going to say timestamp.now. It shouldn't really be a big deal whether you get the timestamp from the local machine or the server, unless the connection is really, really slow. But there's different ways around that too. But for now, we're just going to use timestamp.now. Now I want to say await. And let's rename this, since this is no longer a snapshot. I want to call this, let's do food ref. And I want to say await food ref. And let's do document. So we're getting the document. And we want to get the document with a certain ID. So in our food object, we'll have a ID field. We're not setting that yet, but we'll set that here in a second. But for now, we'll do food.id. And then we have that document, and then we can call update data. So that's how you update the data on a object. And that takes in a map string dynamic. So update data. And this is why we created that toMap function in our food class here. So toMap converts this food to a map. So let's go back to our food API. And here we can do food.toMap. Okay, and this updates the food with this ID with the data from this food as a map. Okay, and now we can do print updated food with ID, and we can say $food.id. This has to be in brackets. And now let's handle the else part. So else, we want to set the created at field because we have the created at field here too that we're setting. So let's say food.created at equals timestamp.now. Okay, and now we want to add the food to our Firebase backend. So let's create a document reference first for it. So let's do document reference, let's do ref equals await, and now we can add our food by using the food ref. So let's do food ref dot add, and we can do the same thing up here as we did up here. We could do food dot to map. Okay, so this is where we actually set the ID for our food when we update or when we add a new food. So now that we have a reference to our document that we uploaded, we can do food.id equals document ref. That's a reference to our document that we just uploaded. Ref dot document ID. So that's the document ID. So that's this ID here. And now we can just, let's print something for debugging. Let's do print uploaded food successfully. And let's just print out the food too. So we'll do food.toString. Okay, and now I actually want to set that ID because that's locally. This is food.id in our app locally. I want to set it on the server too. So we need to set the data after we get the ID from the document that we uploaded. So we can do await document ref dot. Now we do set data, and we can say food.toMap. Okay, and there's another field here that we can set. We can say merge, and we can set it to true. So merge, you can see writes to the document. If merge is true, the provided data will be merged into an existing document instead of overwriting. So that's what we want to do. Instead of overwriting all the other data, we just want to add that new data to our object. Now we need to call this upload food. So all we do here is we call upload food. We pass in the food object. We pass in the is updating Boolean. And if we have a URL, which we do in this case, we pass in the URL. And this is named, so we need to actually name it. So image URL. Okay, and let's copy and paste this down here, and we'll get rid of this. Okay, and that's it. So we're handling both creating a food and uploading a new food with both of these functions. So we're uploading our image first. If that was okay, then we get the URL from the image, if we have an image, and then we call upload food with the image. Then we get the document ref after we add the food to the backend, and then we update the food object with the new ID. Oh yeah, and this is not a feature anymore, so we can get rid of this await here. Okay, so now we can go ahead and call this upload food and image function from our food form screen. So let's go back to our food form, and in the save food, we want to call it right here. So let's paste this into here, and we pass in our current food. We pass in the updating Boolean, so we can say widget.is updating. And then we want to pass in the image file. So we can pass in the image file here. Image file. Okay, and now we need to actually import that. Let's make this mandatory. So let's go back to the API. Okay, so now let's test this out. That was a lot of code. And we get an error here. Let's see what the error is. Positional arguments. Oh yeah, we need to save this first. So let's save. Let's reload. If you watched this entire video, then I thank you very much. This is a lot to take in, but it's very powerful stuff. You can do a lot with Firebase very easily. So let's test this out real quick. Let's go to add, and I'm gonna first add a new image. So let's put a image in here. Let's add the grass here, and then we'll say test one. We'll add a category here. Let's put junk. We'll add some random sub-ingredients here, and let's save now. First, let's clear this and let's save. So let's save. You can see this is okay. Okay, so we can see that our save food function is not being called, so we need to figure out why that is. Let's do print save food called. Let's put a line here. So form saved. So I want to make sure that this function is called at least. And we can actually get rid of the context here because we're not using it. So let's get rid of the context. Okay, let's reload. Let's try to create a new food. Let's create one without an image first. So let's press save. Okay, so you can see that we have uploaded food successfully. Okay, so let's go to our backend here. And you can see that we have a new food here. So we forgot to actually set the category correctly. So let's go back to our code here. We forgot to set this to category. Okay. Restart. And you can see that we have everything else okay. We have created that as a timestamp. We have our ID here matching this. We don't have an image. And we have our sub-ingredients here. Okay. So this is the case where we forgot to handle having a null image in our feed here. So let's go to our feed screen. And where we are actually setting our image, let's put a condition in here. So let's go to image.network. And first, I want to check to see if this is null. So if this is null, or if it's not null, then I want to show this. Else, I want to show a placeholder. So I already have a URL placeholder that I found. I always keep it close by, so I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. This is just a placeholder image. Actually, let's copy this here. And I'm going to go to my detail screen, and I'm going to do the same thing for the image network here. So let's do this, and I'm going to put the condition saying if this is not equal to null, then we show that, else we show the placeholder image. Okay, so let's restart. And we still get an error. Let's go back to our feed again. If it's not equal to null, oh, sorry, dot image. Okay, let's restart. Now you can see we have our placeholder image here. So let's create a new food. Let's do test 2. Let's add sub-ingredient, save. Let's find it somewhere. Okay, test 2 AS, whatever. So we have our name, category, no image, sub-ingredients. Okay. So now let's try to add a new image to this. Let's do, also add a new sub-ingredient. And let's name that test 2 and let's save. Okay, and you can see we have image URL and the upload was okay. So let's look at our backend again. So you can see we have a new food here with our correct information. Okay, so you can see here that our notifier is not updated. So we need to refresh to see our new food. That can be changed by using the food notifier, but I want to keep this video kind of short so we see our new foods here. And let's try to update test 2 here. So let's edit this. And I'm going to change this to test 2, edit it. Let's change this. Let's add a new sub-ingredient here. And let's add a new image. So let's just add this one. I lost connection to my device. I'm not sure why that happened. It wasn't a crash, it just lost the connection. So let's run this again. Yeah, so you can see it didn't change here. So let's try this again. Okay, so we have our feed here again. Let's go and try to edit the same food item again. Let's go to edit. Let's change this to test 2. Junk. Let's try to add a new sub-ingredient. Let's add a image. Let's add this one. And now let's go and try to save. Save. You can see download URL. You can see updated food with ID, this one. Okay, so let's go to our console, and now you can see the same image that we were on. It's test 2. Now we have an image here. We have created at time, and we have updated at time. Okay, so, and our sub-ingredients are also updated. So you can see that we have updated a current food item, and we've created new food items in our app. And we can go back to our feed here and restart. And now you can see that our new data is here. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I want to actually listen for changes in our current food. So let's go to our feed screen, and in our notifier, I want to change this to true. So I want to actually just get rid of this here and do the same in our detail screen. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And now let's restart. Now let's see what happens when we try to edit a food in our app. Let's go to test 2. You can see we have this image here now. Let's go to edit it. Let's change it to the grass. Let's say test 2, edit it. And we'll add some sub-ingredients here. And now let's save. You can see we've updated our food. Now let's see what happens when we go back to the previous detail screen. Back. Now you can see that our item was updated locally too. So we have test 2, edit it, and then we have our new sub-ingredient here. When we went back to the previous screen, we were able to see our changes for our food object locally, which is very nice. And if we go back to the feed screen, you can see our changes are here too. The provider package is very powerful. Like if you don't want to know when things have changed, then you can just use the provider package and set the listener to true or leave it as true. If you don't want to listen for changes and rebuild, then you can set it to false. So yeah, I hope this video helps out. I know it's a long video. This will be my longest video, I hope. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Using Firebase is pretty powerful, and there's a lot more to learn with Firebase, but this covers getting data and uploading data. In part 4, we will cover actually trying to delete an object from your Firebase database. So stay tuned for more, and happy coding. Bye.